Welcome to a new video of the 1982 Kawasaki 750 Limited rebuild. It seems that the further I get into this rebuild, the more unexpected work comes my way. But over the past week I've been able to do quite some work on this bike, so let me go through all the work I've been doing, just as an overview, and later on in this video in more detail. First of all, maybe you remember the left engine cover all the way down here, which both on the inside and the outside was completely filthy, full of grime, and I had no clutch. So I cleaned everything out, which I'll show you later in this video in more detail, adjusted the clutch, put everything back together, and now I have a perfectly working clutch again, as you can see here. There's a little bit of a play at the beginning, that's the intention, and besides that it works just fine. I already checked it with the clutch plates on the other side, moving back and forth when I pull on the clutch, and that's been working just fine. As you might remember, underneath this cover there is of course the clutch shaft and the pushrod and also the front sprocket. After cleaning everything out, there was not a reason to believe that any of the seals were leaking, so I'm just going to give it a try when I finish everything on the engine, start her up, and just watch it carefully to see if there's any leakage. If there is, I'll have to go back in and change out the seals. So that was an important thing that I've done. The other thing that I've been doing is putting the carburetor back in. As you can see here, it's fixed to the engine again, and it still needs to be hooked up to the tank, which actually at this moment is not on the bike. I adjusted the throttle cable, as you can see, and you can also hear it snaps back, and that's working just fine. So that's also been done. Another thing that's been done is reconnecting the exhaust. This is actually the exhaust that came with this bike, and I was able to polish it all up, and it doesn't actually look that bad. Now I connected it to the engine. In a previous video of mine you can see how I refurbished the exhaust to the engine connection. I haven't done anything yet with the headers. I just want to see and hear especially how this engine runs and what it sounds like before I continue any work on the exhaust, but everything's been put back in place and tightened down, and that fits quite nice actually. So that's been put back on the bike. Now in addition, I'm actually at this moment painting the battery box, so that's going to take some coats to finish. And I'm not putting back the side covers on this bike because I don't like it. So first I'm finishing the battery box, then putting it back in to see what it looks like before I arrange all the electrics back into place. And of course you can probably recognize a number of things that are hanging loose here. The regulated rectifier, which actually fits underneath the battery box, and here we have the IC igniter, and the thing will be is to check all the electrics before I put it back in, just to make sure that everything's working so I don't have to replace any parts further down. But that has to be all wired back into the engine, so that also has to be done. I actually stopped working on my modified rear fender because I'm going to buy a custom rear fender that actually goes all the way from here in one go, one rear fender all the way back to here. And the reason for doing so is because this inside stock fender of plastic, it had some damage to it, and also it didn't look very nice It has, when you go over from a black plastic inside fender all the way to a metal fender, which was very heavy and looked very large on this bike. So I'm just going to do one fender and paint it flat black, just like the front fender. So that still has to be done. I need to do my shocks, either to refurbish them or to buy new ones. And these are the things that you run up against with an old bike like this that hasn't been running for a while and everybody's been tinkering with it, is that certain bolts, you just can't get them loose. Like this one here, I tried to get this one loose, forget it. I tried everything, so I'm getting some other equipment in tomorrow and the day after, so I'll get this one off and take off the rear shocks, and they have to be refurbished or replaced, so I have to have a good look at those. Let's see, what else has been done? Well, as you might remember, there are a few things I still have to do before I give this engine a first go. Replace the tachometer, I still need the O-ring for that. Torque down the valve cover. I checked the spark plugs and they're all okay. I still need a gasket for this clutch plate cover here on the right hand side, and a few more screws that I needed to drill out because they were so fixed to the engine. And of course I need my pods, and once I've done that, the last wiring can take place. I can replace the engine and give it a first go. I did clean out the petcock on the engine and replace the O-seal, which actually connects to the tank. And besides that, that's how far I have come over this past week. So after I stop talking, I'll show you some more fragments of video of the details of the work I've been doing. Thanks for watching again, and hopefully a next video will show a finished engine. Bye bye. I've been looking at this pushrod, and it's been damaged here a little bit. And I think that comes because of the fact that this side of the pushrod, where it fits into the clutch cover mechanism, wasn't fitting in right, and actually it was just maybe pulling it back and forth a little bit, and in that way started to damage the pushrod where it enters the engine. Now when I take it all out, you can see the other side is fine. They're actually identical on both sides. Now, I've been reading a lot on the internet, and some people actually turn the pushrod around. So that's also what I'm going to try, so I don't have the damaged area to that extent on the outer side of the engine. So I'll try that in a little bit. I'll try to put the pushrod, I'll push it in the other way around. So there she goes back in. It does fit quite snug eventually when you put it all in, so that looks okay. And the pushrod actually goes all the way through to your engine and comes over to your clutch, and it frees your clutch so you can change gears. Now, I'm going to first of all clean out the clutch cover and make sure that the mechanism in which the pushrod fits is completely clean and in working order. And then I'm going to adjust the clutch, and then I'll also open the clutch cover on the other side and work the clutch, and then show you what happens with the clutch on the other side. Well, I hope you can see a difference before and after. I was able to thoroughly clean out the inside. Well, I've been making some adjustments. As you can see here, you have a lock nut and a screw. When you open up the lock nut, you're able to turn the screw and either make the clutch cable and the clutch tighter or looser. It has a little bit of a play in the beginning. And after that it grabs the clutch perfectly. So there you see. That was the clutch. Cleaned it all out, adjusted it, and now it's back in working order. On to the next job. Here you have a quick view of the battery tray, which has been repainted and repositioned in the bike. And as you can see, the regulator rectifier has been connected to the bottom of this battery tray. And I've done this on purpose because I want to see how much room I have left to put in the rest of the electronics, like the IC igniter and the fuse box and all the other wiring, stuff like that. So this all has to go back in, and the IC igniter is a finned module, so that means that's going to be needing air. It has to be cooled. So that's the only thing that I'm worried about a little bit. The rest can all be concealed in a metal box. So what I'm planning on doing is making a metal box, same black paint, connecting it somewhere in this area, and then connecting the IC igniter to this new box on the outside, just like the regulator rectifier. So then all you'll be seeing is the battery tray with, of course, a battery in it and a sort of a black box. That's it. No wiring, no electrics to be seen, and keep that as clean as possible, especially when I'm going to put on these pods and not putting back in the standard air filter or air box. And also, as I'm putting in a new rear fender, I want this middle section to look very neat, as I'm not adding on the side covers. So that's what I'm working on that part of the engine. When going through the wiring, I noticed I'm missing a condensator or a flasher unit. There are supposed to be 2 of those in here, and I actually only have 1, so I'll also have to be getting an extra one. Here you have a view of the brackets and the bolts of the ignition coils that are fixed underneath the tank, and as you can see, they were quite rusty, so they're now in a bath of vinegar, and I'll be cleaning them all up and in the course of this week repainting the brackets and putting the ignition coils back in.